It is me back for the second episode of Underwater, your favorite new podcast from your homies over at The Pond. I'm joined today by the one and only Metaregular. Meta, in addition to just being a complete Chad at Parallel TCG, is a excellent collector and as well somebody that I'm happy to call a friend. Meta and I work together on the Echelon Prime Foundation, focusing on building out a gaming ecosystem using the Prime token. The first game which we'll be using this, of course, is Parallel TCG. Today, I'm pretty excited to have Meta. We're gonna chat a little bit about GDC. For those of you who don't know, GDC is a huge game developer conference. I think it's called Game Developer Conference. But yeah, it's a huge event that happens every year in San Francisco. And this year seems like it was a pretty big year for crypto. But before we get into that, welcome Meta Regular. I floated this past Rogue on last week's episode, but I I kind of think that this Coinbase Walls notice was somewhat bullish, right? Like the cards are finally on the table. At least a lot of the cards are on the table. I feel like that uncertainty about what was going to happen post FTX with both the agency-led enforcement as well as potential bills passed by the U.S. Congress. I know insert joke about U.S. Congress actually passing bills here. But yeah, it's like all of a sudden we have a bit of clarity and people are like, oh, okay, like I can work with that. Like, oh, they're just gonna try to fuck Coinbase? Okay. I mean, sure. We'll just buy all the tokens.
Yeah, it's. I mean, sometimes just things like I mean, there's probably obviously a completely rational reason why this exists. I just, as a sort of, just as a casual sort of, I guess like attendee of all the sort of government and SEC stuff. Like I don't know enough about that stuff to sort of figure out some of that macro stuff. But on the sort of basic retail end, which is what I would sort of consider myself, like we're okay. ETH is up. I mean, it's weird because I was saying this to one of the other guys. Is like, are we in a bear market? ETH is at 18. What's it? Yeah, it's at 1800. Like that is not bear market numbers for ETH. And really, like, if the last or the worst of it was at whatever 960, that 3-digit ETH there that went down for like, I don't know, 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes, was the bottom. Like it's been a long bear, a weird, but like this is nothing in comparison to 2018, 19. Like back then we got right back down to like 100, I think $200 ETH or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it feels weird, and I don't personally, I don't know how it should go, and I sort of stopped worrying about all that stuff. Macro this, micro that. Like I just look at the pictures. I like my I like my my pixels.
Yeah, you do. You are what the kids call an art enjoyer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I mean, I think we're seeing right now that sort of inverse relationship between the cost or like the pricing of fine art NFTs in ETH versus ETH's price. As much as we want to pretend that a lot of these NFTs are priced in cryptocurrencies and tied to the crypto market, it does seem like a lot of them are still inherently tied to USD pricing.
Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. And I think that there's probably something there where, with royalties going down, like I think there's something there, and I haven't spent too much time thinking about it exactly, but essentially, like with royalties going essentially to zero, uh, the folks that are selling NFTs at lower or sort of whatever they paid for it are still gaining a profit. So this whole effect of basically having royalties optional, no, it sucks. It's sort of pricing in the sort of floor right now, but I think people are willing to drop the floor because they don't need to, or they've already captured, or they will be up on whatever their purchase is. Now, I feel like the all the other sort of bigger stuff with like blur farming and everything is also having an impact on sort of NFTs as a whole. But I think the royalty stuff is sort of at least partially a factor on why we're seeing a bit of the NFT floors going lower.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense. Awesome. Well, yeah, I guess at the start I had sort of set it up that we would chat about GDC. So, yeah, I'd love to pivot there now. So you were at GDC this year, and I guess, yeah, maybe a little bit of setup here. Last year, you and I were at PAX West, and I guess speaking for myself here, that was a pretty big reality check, so to speak, for me. In that, a lot of us in Web3 gaming who have invested in Web3 gaming companies, work with Web3 gaming companies, build Web3 gaming products. There's always been this like huge mantra of like, oh, if we build it, they will come, and like we'll just market to all these gamers. But I think going to a big game conference last year really cemented for me that it was like, oh shit, we maybe don't even actually know who are like we don't know this customer. This customer doesn't know us. We're actually like really behind in sort of our understanding of who they are and how to market them, especially considering the sort of negative sentiment that exists specifically about NFTs in the gaming community. Um, but I was really heartened to sort of hear from you and others that GDC felt totally different this year. Yeah, would love to sort of just get your take on, sort of how GDC was and how it maybe compared a bit to our trip to PAX last year.
Yeah, GDC was incredible. I think that I got a lot out of it. I think that there was a huge shift there in terms of Web3 um, and sort of blockchain gaming. Um, these conversations were openly had, like, and maybe it was partially due to the location in being in San Francisco and being more of like, I guess, more progressive in terms of crypto or tech or anything like that. But walking down the street, you can hear people talking about staking and tokens. When I was manning or helping man the station at the Polygon booth where Parallels uh, Alpha was being featured, or the Alpha client was being featured. There were conversations on tokenomics asked by common passerbys, and this is definitely like a stark contrast to what was our experience at PAX West, where you know um, and no games were sort of um, outwardly crypto friendly. We only discovered one of the games uh, was sort of NFT or crypto related from a tip from a fellow colleague, and even when we approached them to talk about it, it was sort of like, yeah, they sort of explained this process of applying, getting rejected because they were so too I guess Web3 forward. Um, but yeah, this is sort of very promising because I think we're likely going to see a shift in this direction. And in fact, like one of the presentations, so at GDC there was this almost like an entire building, or at least like a quarter of one like, you know, that these conferences are sort of huge complexes with multiple buildings and all these events going on. And one of the buildings was almost like fully dedicated to, um, you know, Web3 or blockchain stuff. Like you had people putting up booths for um, like server management, blockchain metadata management, you know, all these other services that like sort of don't, they're not present unless you're fully committed. You know what I mean? Um, and and anyways, at one of these uh, at this building, there was essentially a constant stream of presentations uh, on Web3 gaming or blockchain gaming as a whole uh, throughout the entire day. Like constantly, every hour on the hour, there was another presentation where you had industry professionals sort of explaining to the greater public like what this sort of means to the industry, and it was really great. And one of the presentations, sorry, I'm a bit sort of off on a tangent here, but he basically said that his theory was every game will sort of incorporate blockchain tech uh, in the future, in the next like 3 to 5 years. That was his sort of thesis. Um, and I'm biased and I tend to believe that. But it sort of speaks to the sort of sentiment that, you know, we're sort of on the cusp of a big change in the industry.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, that's great. And I think, look, we tend to believe the same things, obviously we wouldn't be spending our time and money investing in this space and specifically in games if we didn't sort of believe this core thesis. But I think like something I've been thinking about way more is the signals and the analogs that currently exist in the Web 2 gaming world. So, I mean, I've spoken a ton about Counter-Strike. I've written a lot about Counter-Strike. I fucking love Counter-Strike. It's a great game. But, like, more importantly, it has a really robust economy that, okay, yes, it's pumped up by some speculation right now. But, you have this 10 to 11-year-old economy of sort of skins that have existed within the Counter Strike ecosystem, and there's a secondary marketplace. You can actually trade this stuff like natively on Steam. You can trade it via third party, and like, look, it's not full Web3 decentralized ownership of digital assets, but it is analogous to the types of systems. I think someone else described it to me, and I think they really nailed it as it's like functionally a private blockchain in a sense, right? Like you have private ownership models. Now, maybe there's a services agreement or a terms of service that you agree to with Valve that says that you're effectively leasing these things. And so, we can get into the nuances of ownership there. But if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, I mean, in March alone, $500 million more or less was spent opening cases of skins for guns in Counter Strike. Now, yeah, I mentioned there's a bit of speculation going on there right now, but there's also demand for digital assets. Then you look at sort of like what Fortnite announced at GDC with this more kind of like open, like the ability to build your own islands and build these own worlds and greater revenue share with the people who build them. And it's again, yeah, I know that Roblox exists and Minecraft exists and you already have some of these open worlds, but maybe the most commercially successful game over the last while in Fortnite and in a massive developer and studio like, or I guess publisher like Epic, leaning into, more of the sort of like, I guess it's like these themes that feel very embedded in the culture of crypto and Web3, and seeing those appear more and more on the Web2 side makes me believe, yeah, like we are going to, we are going to cut over to these, seeing digital asset ownership in a truly like Web3 native way more and more in these traditional games.
Yeah, I agree, and it's sort of weird. Like, I think a lot of the stuff still just sort of boils down to education and adoption. I mean, I think that like maybe because we're more crypto native, like certain things become, you know, seemingly are quite obvious to us, but there is still a bit of work to be done. And maybe another insight from GDC is that like some of these conversations that we're having there or that are being had are sort of like explaining on first principles, like what the sort of benefit is, what the sort of what the technology unlocks. Uh, like there was a presentation on what are tokenomics. For us, like something that like we deal with like on a day-to-day basis, like they're basically walking through that there's a token and these tokens sort of unlock different utilities and allows players to sort of essentially get a benefit for interacting within the ecosystems that they're enjoying being a part of. And those are that's just the start, right? I think like 3 years from now we're gonna be getting into these conference presentations where it's like we're going to get into the thick of the detail because it's going to be a bit more ingrained. Like talking about like different types of economies, how certain games will, require certain like mechanics to keep the whole thing running. And those are the conversations that I think we're working on at Echelon. But I'm excited to start to see those conversations happening more frequently. But yeah, like for now, I feel like we're getting there. People are starting to warm up to the idea. Basic sort of general terms are getting sort of more embedded into the vernacular, and eventually we'll hope to see a bit more sort of like adoption or people having those light bulb moments that maybe for the more native folks are obvious to us.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess before we sort of wrap up here, I'm curious, based on your time at GDC, and you can't answer parallel because I think we are obviously quite biased with parallel. Other than parallel, what were the sort of Web3 games that impressed you the most that you think have maybe the biggest chance of breaking out into having this sort of like actual crossover between traditional gamers and crypto?
Well, I didn't really spend too much time playing all the games. I heard that Shrapnel was like a pretty big hit, at least with the team that we were running with. The lineup was just a little too long, and I couldn't participate. But it's I believe like a first person shooter that's built on Avalanche. There was also again I didn't get a chance to play it, but the Dead Drop tactical, I guess, vertical extraction shooter. Um, Obviously, that one's backed by pretty big streamer. So that one likely is going to have a lot of eyes on it that might convert over. And yeah, I don't know. It's really interesting, right? Like I think the first thought is to sort of take Web2 games and sort of convert them into Web3 space. But I think there's probably going to be a game that we don't know, we don't think it's going to be the game, but it will actually I guess like convert the most people. Like interestingly enough, like games like I don't know Candy Crush or Tetris, something like very basic like that. Like I feel has a place here, and I don't even know how. I mean, I if I spent like 5-10 minutes, I could probably figure out like how a Tetris like game could be part of like a token economy. But those types of games like they're so abstract and simple, that like they have enough, they have the ability to just be a little bit more um, uh, I don't know how to say it, like easy for people to sort of digest. And like I think what's interesting about those games is like it's just like purely fun, right? Like you just sort of see these blocks come down, you connect the sort of blocks, and that's like immediate endorphin rush, right? Like you just sort of got the sort of points, and you're happy. And like, sometimes it's just as simple as that. And obviously for the more avid gamers, they want that experience like maximized times three with like explosions. But some people just want something very basic. So I'm curious to see what games do break out. And my hunch is actually um, the simpler it is, um, maybe the better. Uh, that's what I'm thinking.
Interesting. I love it. All right, one more before we get out of here. Give me your like 2 minute takes on Diablo 4 beta.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I am. If nobody knows, I am a huge Diablo 2 nerd. I played just like an extensive amount. Like I'm talking an obscene amount of hardcore mode Diablo 2 for basically just my entire life. And so I've been waiting for this game for about 4 years. When they first announced it with the cinematic trailer, it looked sick as hell. And I'm gonna wait a bit to give a full verdict, because I think like how these types of games really open up, like a bottle of wine. You need to experience the end game. You need to be able to like get the satisfaction of min maxing at the highest levels and seeing how you can like take like a relatively sort of hard boss, and obviously try to beat them faster. So in the beta, we only have like about 20. It's only 25 levels, and it's pretty much scratching the surface of the game. So so far it's been incredibly easy, and there are certain things I really like, which is the combat and the skill trees. All that it's really cool. The things I dislike are the itemization. Seems a little bit you know uh, convoluted, and I hate things where like a ring is the same size slot as like a suit of armor. I know it's simpler to deal with inventory like that, but it also feels like sort of watered down. And then I guess my third point there is like Blizzard and the sort of Diablo series is sort of like pushed the envelope of the genre like every single time they've released the game, except for I mean I guess there are proponents that think Diablo 3 was a good game. I didn't like it as much, but they basically push the ARPG mechanics like quite a big deal, and I felt like this game has a little bit too much, too similar to or inherited too much of this sort of ARPG conventions. So if you've ever played Lost Ark, the way that the nav, the mini map, the sort of quest pop ups, that it's all very similar. And really, the only thing that is different from Lost Ark is, to me, like the combat system feeling just a little bit crispier. Yeah, I don't know. I'm an old timer, so I feel like just give me all the dials and let me keep tweaking them until I get the right fit. But this one, there are dials for sure, and maybe I just don't. I need to learn more about some of the end game dials to sort of really feel it out. But for now, I'm giving it like I don't know, a C plus right now.
Well, there we go. You heard it. You heard it here first. Old timer Metaregular given Diablo 4 a C plus so far. Well, yeah. Thanks for that, Meta. Let's leave it there. It was great chatting about GDC gaming and little D4 shit posting. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have you back on again soon. And thanks for
Yeah,
joining, man.
anytime. No, this is fun. I'm liking this sort of format of quick chats. Really have not even a sort of schedule or itinerary on the conversation. So I think that
Yeah,
these are,
let's just do it
yeah,
live,
like
dude.
I mean, like it's fun and I guess organic, but it also keeps the conversation light. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Love it.
All right.
All right. Well, take it easy, Meta, and to all the listeners, we will catch you next week. All
Cheers.
right. Bye bye.